Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Linguavote introduction tutorials. In parts 1 and 2 I introduced you to Linguavote's gamified approach to language learning. Now I'd like to introduce you to the methodology we use, which we call implicit activation. Implicit activation is a new approach to teaching lexis that has a foundation in traditional rote learning, but is also influenced by cognitive research into implicit and explicit memory, and also by theories around intentional and incidental learning strategies. This is how it works. In Lesson 1, students learn a set of vocabulary flashcards. So for example, in this unit about jobs, students start by learning types of job: an engineer, a doctor, an architect, and so on. In the following phrase activity, they are tested on the target vocabulary by matching the bold underlined word in the phrase to its corresponding photo. In this activity, students are also exposed to other lexis, builds machines, and a semantic structure, in this case the present simple, as part of a context. Here it is stating facts. In Lesson 2, the words that students were exposed to in Lesson 1's phrase activity now become the explicit learning items in the flashcards. In this case, it's a group of verbs associated with jobs: builds machines, works in an office, serves people on a plane, etc. Because students have already been exposed to them implicitly in the previous lesson's phrase activity, they appear less daunting, the form will be more familiar, and students will already be able to infer meaning, helping them to memorise the vocabulary more effectively. Then, when students are tested on these target words, they are exposed to another set of vocabulary in the following phrase activity: rewarding, and other adjectives to describe jobs, such as exciting and interesting. In the third lesson, as you probably guessed, the vocabulary flashcards that students learn intentionally are the adjectives that students were exposed to incidentally in the previous lesson's phrase activity. Adjectives to describe jobs like rewarding, exciting, boring, and tiring. In the following phrase activity, we bring together all three groups of vocabulary into a natural phrase, so that although students are being tested on rewarding, they are able to understand the phrase as a whole. This approach to introducing new vocabulary sets means that students are learning the same items intentionally and incidentally. They are using both explicit and implicit memory, often simultaneously, and this approach is designed to simulate natural language immersion. The implicit activation sequence we looked at there was from the elementary level. Let's look at how that sequence fits into the general unit structure at this level. The vocabulary flashcards and the phrase activity aren't the only exposure students get to the target language. Students also complete a vocabulary matching activity where they match photos to the phrases, and also a poll where they use the target language presented in the lesson to express an opinion. Lessons 4 and 5 are the skills-based lessons. In Lesson 4, students read and listen to a text around the unit topic, then do some comprehension activities, then vote in a poll around the issues presented in the text. So for example, the text in the jobs unit is about the 5 worst jobs in the world. A gist question gives students an initial objective for reading the text. Students can hover over any of the underlined words in the text to see a translation in their own language. They then complete some comprehension questions in which they may need to return to the text. Then in the following poll, they vote to express their opinion in the topic introduced in the text. So in this case, which of the 5 jobs do they think is the worst? In Lesson 5, students do a grammar activity, then a video-based listening activity, then the final writing task. Here's an example of a grammar activity item. Linguavote adopts a deductive approach to learning grammar. By now, students will have noticed how the grammar point in focus is formed in the Lesson 1, 2 and 3 phrase activities, and they will have already started to deduce grammatical meaning. This activity is a test of how well they were able to do this. The approach used here is based on the recognition that you will be teaching your students these grammar points in class, so it's not necessary to teach grammar in the same way on the platform. The video-based listening activity looks like this. These are not actors on a green screen. Linguavote uses authentic and natural video interviews with real people talking unscripted about the unit topic, but conveniently dropping in some of the words that were introduced in the unit. Students listen to the people in the videos and select the words they hear. In the final writing activity, students are asked to write a response to the unit question, the unit's main learning outcome. Unlike the optional comments on the poll results pages, they must write something here in order to complete the unit. To help them, they can see the writing submissions from other students, and they can access all the vocabulary flashcard items with translations by clicking on the Guide tab. When they have submitted their writing, they have the option to email it to their teacher. We'll look at how you can make use of this function in the Reviewing Students' Work tutorial. The structure of the units at beginner level is slightly different because we are introducing fewer vocabulary items. At beginner level, new vocabulary items are introduced in lessons 1 and 2 only, and there are no polls in lessons 1 and 2. The beginner lesson 3 is always a review lesson, so there's one long phrase activity where students are tested on the vocabulary introduced in lessons 1 and 2, then a poll. Lessons 4 and 5 are structured in the same way as at the higher levels. The only difference is in the reading activity. At beginner level, instead of having a reading text, students read a short poem that is made up mostly of words introduced in the unit, with additional vocabulary defined pictorially. Students can click on the audio to hear the poem read with a beat behind it, like a chant, so that they can hear the rhythm of the language and practice their own pronunciation. That's the end of this tutorial, in which I introduced you to Linguavote's implicit activation method and provided an overview of how the units are structured. Join me in part 4, in which we'll look at the report function for moderating student comments.